Good evening. I'm Ariel Reshef here with the latest on President Trump and his battle with COVID-19. And some breaking news. After teasing it on Twitter, President Trump briefly left Walter Reed Hospital in a motorcade to greet supporters waiting outside. The president was wearing a mask, and you can see him waving at those supporters through the window. We should note the president remains hospitalized and will not return to the White House tonight. The president's doctors at Walter Reed telling reporters that President Trump is getting better, but did receive supplemental oxygen on Friday, a different message than what the doctors said during a briefing yesterday. ABC's Rachel Scott has the latest.
Tonight, in a surprise move, the president taking his motorcade outside Walter Reed Medical Center. You could see him in a mask, waving to supporters who have been lined up for hours wishing him well. In a new video saying he's learned a lot about the virus during his experience at the hospital.
This is the real school. This isn't the let's read the book school. And I get it, and I understand it, and it's a very interesting thing, and I'm going to be letting you know about it.
Earlier, the doctor responsible for the president's health walking up to the microphones to give an update on his patient and update his own statements. Dr. Sean Conley explaining why he intentionally withheld information from the American people, saying he didn't want to raise alarm.
I was trying to reflect the upbeat attitude that the team, the president, that his course of illness has had. I didn't want to give any information that might steer the course of illness in another direction, and in doing so, it came off that we were trying to hide something, which wasn't necessarily true. So here I have it.
The White House releasing these images. The president out of bed and behind a desk at Walter Reed Medical Center, saying he continues to improve. But the mixed messages from physicians and the administration raise questions about the true nature of his condition. Today, Conley telling reporters he did administer oxygen to the president at the White House on Friday for about an hour after his blood oxygen dropped and he had a high fever. Sources tell us Trump had trouble breathing.
I was concerned for possible rapid progression of the illness. I recommended the president we try some supplemental oxygen, see how he'd respond.
That admission coming after he made false statements while evading repeated questions just 24 hours earlier.
Yesterday and today, he was not on oxygen. Thursday, no oxygen, none at this moment. Yeah, and yesterday with the team, while we were all here, he was not on oxygen.
Conley has already backtracked on the timing of the president's diagnosis and adding to the confusion minutes after he delivered a rosy assessment of Trump's condition.
We remain cautiously optimistic, but he's doing great.
White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows warned Trump's vitals over the last 24 hours were very concerning, cautioning the next 48 hours will be critical in terms of his care, reiterating those comments last night on Fox News.
Yesterday morning, we were real concerned with that. He had a fever, and his blood oxygen level had dropped rapidly.
Today, reporters asked, whose statement should we believe? The president's physician or the White House Chief of Staff seen rubbing his head during the briefing?
I think his statement was misconstrued. What he meant was that 24 hours ago, when he and I were checking on the president, that there was that momentary episode of the high fever and that temporary drop in the saturation.
Hours later, the president, irritated with Meadows, sought to reassure the American people himself.
I came here, wasn't feeling so well. I feel much better now. You don't know over the next period of a few days. I guess that's the real test. So we'll be seeing what happens over those next couple of days.
The doctors say the president is continuing with remdesivir, an antiviral treatment, and has begun a steroid after his blood oxygen levels dipped a second time.
Yesterday, there was another episode where he dropped down about 93%. He doesn't ever feel short of breath. We watched it, and it returned back up.
Tonight, it's still unclear just how many people connected to the president have been exposed to the virus. His close aide, Hope Hicks, tested positive on Thursday. Despite having close contact with Hicks all week, that day, the president traveled to Bedminster for a campaign fundraiser, meeting with about 100 supporters like Charlie Colleen, who told ABC News he got tested after the campaign reached out to him Friday.
I was surprised to hear that the president did have coronavirus, given how healthy and upbeat he did sound at that event.
Colleen tested negative, but after the news of the president's own positive test broke just before 1 a.m. Friday, The list of others infected seemed to grow by the hour.
3 more people tested positive for the virus.
Pope Hicks has tested positive for COVID-19.
3 Senate Republicans have now tested positive for coronavirus.
Today, word the president's personal assistant and body man Nick Luna, seen next to Hicks boarding Air Force One without a mask Wednesday, is also positive. We still don't know how long the president has been contagious or when he contracted the virus. And health experts fear last week's celebration of Supreme Court nominee Judge Amy Coney Barrett may have been a super spreader event. At a reception inside the White House that day, guests maskless and close together. The same was true outside when the president introduced Barrett. Several in the audience would later test positive, including Senator Tom Tillis, Senator Mike Lee, Kellyanne Conway, the First Lady, the president of the University of Notre Dame, and former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, spotted here hugging other attendees. Christie was also at the White House on Monday, part of the team prepping the president for Tuesday's debate in Cleveland.
No one was wearing masks in the room when we were prepping the president during that period of time.
Now 5 of the 9 there are positive. Christie, an ABC News contributor, revealing overnight, due to a history of asthma, he checked himself into a hospital as a precautionary measure and is experiencing mild symptoms.
Now I want to bring in infectious disease expert Dr. Todd Ellerin. Doctor, what do you make of the therapeutics and treatments the president has received so far?
Hi, Ariel. So obviously I'm not part of the Walter Reed medical team, but I have treated hundreds of COVID-19 patients. So what I'll tell you is this. The remdesivir that he's getting is an antiviral. It works against the virus to drive down the viral load. It hasn't been shown to improve survival. It has been shown to improve recovery time. And we think it works better earlier than later. So I think it's good that he received that. As far as that monoclonal antibody cocktail, that is not part of the standard of care. That's still experimental. It's been studied in over 200 patients. So far, the data looks optimistic in the sense that it also drives down the level of virus and is able to basically stop the virus from entering the cell, stop it from hijacking that cell. So with that, we think there's also a faster recovery time. Now, when it comes to dexamethasone, that's trickier, and I'll tell you why. Because a recovery trial, one of the largest trials that has informed us about dexamethasone from the UK, showed that if you give this medication when patients are requiring oxygen or are fighting for their lives in the intensive care unit on a breathing machine, it does improve survival. But if you give it too early, before patients require oxygen, then it can actually increase mortality. Now, that wasn't statistically significant, but there was a trend. What that's saying is you want to give dexamethasone to patients who are on oxygen, but you don't want to give it to patients who don't require oxygen. It sounds like President Trump is somewhere in the middle. That must have been a tough call by his medical team. They have to weigh the risks and the benefits, and hopefully they've made the right decision.
Doctors saying they're optimistic the president could be released as early as tomorrow. Can you talk a little bit, though, about some of the long-term effects of COVID-19? Even if the president is able to leave the hospital soon, like so many, could he be dealing with this virus for months?
Absolutely. So, we have to think about this virus in the acute stage, and the president is in this acute stage. So if and when he recovers from this, what we have seen is somewhere between 10 and maybe a third of patients can actually have a prolonged recovery period where they can have symptoms of shortness of breath, even with normal oxygen levels. They can have chest pain, hair loss, brain fog. They can feel slower, not able to exert themselves as much. These are tricky because it's hard to predict which patients will have this post-COVID or this long tail syndrome and which patients will recover within 2 weeks and not have any residual symptoms. That remains to be seen. But at this point, we have to think about President Trump's illness on a day-by-day basis, not necessarily think of what are things going to be like in a few weeks. Remember, patients can be perfectly fine on one day, and then 24 hours later, they can be fighting for their lives in the intensive care unit. So we just have to hope that the therapies are working and that he recovers as quickly as possible.
Dr. Ellerin, so many of the people in the president's inner circle who tested positive so far were at that Rose Garden celebration for Supreme Court nominee Amy Coney Barrett at the White House. We saw those images, no social distancing, hardly any masks in sight. We've reported extensively on super spreader events. Do you believe that this should fall in that category?
I think this very well could be a super spreading event, Ariel. I mean, let's face it, each day we're hearing more and more patients and people who have turned positive that were part of this event or other potentially related events. Remember, super spreading events are not just about the host. We do think that you probably have to have individuals that have high amounts of viral load in the back of their nose or the back of their throat and are emitting it to other people. But remember, if you are within 6 feet, if you're not wearing a mask, behavioral changes can absolutely ignite these type of super spreading events. So we want to think about the host, behavior, and the environment. We know that super spreading events tend to happen indoors more than outdoors, but perhaps the Rose Garden event is an exception. A recent study from India showed that 6% or 8% of patients who are infected can transmit the virus to 60%. So it's not like influenza where there's a predictable spread. So what has to happen is we have to test all of those close contacts and anyone who is exposed to someone who is positive. And then ideally, those people should be quarantined for 14 days, irrespective of whether their test was positive or negative.
We will learn so much more in the coming days. Dr. Ellerin, thank you so much for sharing your insight as always. We appreciate it. And that does it for us here on ABC News Live. We will continue to bring you the very latest on President Trump's diagnosis as we have it. I'm Ariel Reshef in New York. Stay safe out there. Have a great night.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.